Guys, welcome back to my Sassy review channel. I'm going to be reviewing Welcome to Derry. I had a lot of time over the break to kind of watch this show and kind of catch up on everything. There's several other shows I want to review, but let's talk about this one first. This is going to be a spoiler review, so again, spoiler if you've never seen this yet or if you plan on watching it. I do not recommend this, but I am going to give my honest opinion on it, okay? So let's start with the beginning of Welcome to Derry. I will say it was a little slow for me personally. I think the first episode was a little corny. Now, I'm only saying this based on the really bad CGI effects in the beginning. Like I- when the kid gets in the car, I'm kind of like, okay, cool. We're getting right into it. Um, and then of course, spoiler alert, when we have it as a baby come out in the car, I just feel like that kind of threw off the whole scene in the beginning. Like, I truly do. I didn't think it was that good of a start. Like, everybody was talking about how shocked they were, how, like, oh, yeah, this was like the best scene ever. And to me, it was just weird, to say the least. Like, I know it has, like, it's different sets of gore and different types of scenes involving kids, but this one was a little weak for me. I felt like I had more questions than answers in the beginning episode, especially because we got no real backstory on the kid in the car. So it kind of just jumped right in there without any real dialogue or anything to connect that character with. So I didn't really care that he died. Anyway, moving on to the next part of this. I'm not going to go into detail about every episode, even though I could. I do want to say that it took me about four, maybe three or four episodes before I felt like it was starting to get good. And what I mean by that is a lot of it was a lot of military overlay, like for the plot. We had the Native American plot, we had the origin of Pennywise and what he is. That was all good and fine, but I just felt like it kept repeating what was in It Chapter 2. So I don't feel like we really needed that storyline per se, but they threw it in there anyway. Um, there were just a lot of things that just, I don't know, felt a little flat until Bill Skarsgård started doing more scenes. So when he finally starts coming out and they go into like the circus plot line, they go into the history of you know, the carnival and how it became Pennywise. And, we had this new group of kids that we're finally getting some backstory on because, of course, in the beginning, they killed off the first set of kids. So they had to focus on another set of kids who are kind of figuring or trying to figure out why they keep seeing certain things. He didn't really manifest to them as a clown in the beginning, which I thought was kind of interesting. He appeared to them in different ways, mostly because of bad CGI. Again, I couldn't stand the CGI. Like the grocery store CGI was terrible. The baby was terrible. What I could appreciate though was Bill Skarsgård's performance in this as Pennywise. I think he had a lot of creepy scenes. He had a lot of funny scenes. He made Pennywise a lot more witty than the last two movies from It Chapter One and Two. I feel like there was a lot of funny dialogue, even though when he's killing somebody or eating somebody, it just some of it just comes off as funny. I love when he says, "So long, losers." Like, there's just certain elements to his acting that I can truly appreciate, especially being this big of a horror icon. Okay, so let's talk about Mrs. Kirsch. Now, I loved how they incorporated Mrs. Kirsch into this series because it kind of gives you an idea of who she was in the It universe. I absolutely love the Periwinkle side story. I love that reveal. Especially like I said, when they were going into the circus plot, that was like definitely one of my favorite plot lines to go down. And this is kind of where the show started taking off for me was when they started developing this character. Uh, it only got better from here. Love the aesthetic of Periwinkle. I love the father daughter story. If you know what I'm talking about, you know. It kind of built up towards the end of the series. It was kind of interesting what happened to Mrs. Kirsch. I do love how it ended per se. But I will give my final reviews on what I think of the series. Um, there is one more character I do want to talk about, so I will go ahead and talk about that. Let's talk about Dick Halloran. Now, this character was such an interesting ad for this show. Like, there were moments I truly loved this character and moments that I just didn't really understand why he was there. Like, I totally understand that he has the shining, so to speak, or some sort of power to see the dead and communicate with them. But what I wanted to know was how the military got a hold of him. How did the military find out he had these powers? And what was he using it for before then? I mean, it was just kind of interesting to see this character develop. Like, there were moments where I thought he was a weak character and moments where I thought he was a strong character towards the end. I just don't feel a lot of resolve for his character. Like, I get that he was able to interact with Pennywise in a way that others could not. Um, he was able to kind of draw some spiritual energy from Native Americans that have been deceased, or like, I don't know, he has some sort of power that's very brushed over. And I think that may be something that might be explained in Stephen King's books. But the ending of it made it seem like he goes on to work at the Overlook Hotel. So we already know that that has to do with The Shining. And of course, becomes a cook, and the cook is the one who does have that same shining ability. Um, so there's just so many elements to this show. I did appreciate the background of Derry. I think they handled the segregation parts very well. They were very, very good at showing the climate of how race is handled back then, especially when we had segregation. Um, it was handled very well, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of Sinners. I don't know, and honestly, we'll talk about that in another video because Sinners was like one of my favorite movies of the year, in all honesty. But I think they handled that very well. But I wanted more for this character. I really, really did, and I wish they would have utilized him more. Now let's do a quick summary of the ending. The ending was great. When I said that I enjoyed like the second half of this show, that is when the show truly began for me. It pumped it up a notch for Bill Skarsgård. He was in more scenes. We had more stories between the kids. Rich was probably the saddest story plot ever. They nailed it with that. Um, it was just really good. I enjoyed some of the ending tying with some of the other It Chapter 1 and 2 movies and the books. Um, a couple of things that I really wish they would have worked on was developing the story of the kids more. They kind of briefly hinted like at the whole time space thing, going back in time, time traveling, whatever it may be. Him possibly seeing into the future, knowing that their future kids were going to kill him. Again, I wasn't really paying attention to that part because I was more interested in how they were going to subdue Pennywise. Um, there are some things though with that plot line that I just don't really understand. I understand that that pillar was used to kind of keep him within a certain area, but then if you go back to like the very first It with Tim Curry, and then you go back to the book and you go back to It Chapter 1 and 2, how is he able to freely move wherever and create these sort of, I don't even know what you wanna call them, but images for kids and all of these scenarios? I honestly wish that the killings weren't more direct in this show. Like, I really wish he would've been more like the Pennywise we see in It Chapter 1 and 2, where he kinda lures kids in. That was something I didn't really see in this series. Like, that was the one thing I was kind of expecting. Like, there were probably a few scenes here and there, but it was nothing like It Chapter 1 and 2, where we had, Beverly talking to the drain. We had, the shower scene. We had, just different things, like him appearing in the clothing line and the sheets. There's just so many different scenarios, and he kills differently. And of course, the famous scene with Georgie where he drags him through the drain. These are things that I was kind of expecting, but instead he kind of manifested in different ways. And that was the only real issue I had with that, aside from the military plot dragging on. I don't feel like it really served a purpose. Like, I understand that, like, they were researching this alien and wanted to develop him into a weapon, but it didn't turn out that way at all. And there's no military presence in it chapter 1 and 2 either. So I don't know, that part just has me wondering. And then in it chapter 1 and 2, there was no Native Americans around the town of Derry either. Like, I know they have their own reservation they live on, but not to see any Native American population in it chapter 1 and 2, and then bringing that into Welcome to Derry, that part didn't really make a whole lot of sense for me.
Mostly children. Something bad's coming.
So the real question is, should you watch Welcome to Derry? Well, as a horror connoisseur and a lover of all things horror movies, yes, you should watch it and give it a shot. I've had friends tell me that it is a little bit slow and it's a little bit boring. But I think once you get past, like I said, the first 3 to 4 episodes, it starts to kick up. If you really like Pennywise, you'll enjoy it. You just kind of have to ignore the bad CGI. Some storylines were a little weak. um, Again, Bill Skarsgård, 10 out of 10. The show, I'd probably give it about maybe like an 8 out of 10, because I think the reason why people really like this show is because there's nothing like it on TV. Like, there's very little horror anthology series anymore coming out for TV. Now, HBO does have a track record of coming out with like True Blood and other great shows. So this one was definitely a surprise for a lot of fans. I think you'll enjoy it, especially if you like if you like Pennywise, if you like horror, this is for you. But again, you have to go in with an open mind and understand that there are some ups and downs in this show. So there's some sad scenes, there's some really stupid scenes. But again, I definitely recommend watching. Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for listening to my review. Um, Leave your thoughts and comments down below if you want to discuss it. You can always subscribe to my channel. I am going to be reviewing some more movies soon or TV shows. I did recently watch The Talamasca, so I do want to cover that. But yeah, thank you for listening. See ya.